Bud, you're not going to believe this now.
You're
I
right.
know it doesn't look like much, but
You're right.
trust me, there are some incredible cars in there. There's a Ford GT, a Cobra, a Scarab.
Look where we are, Dave.
Yeah, I know.
Look where we are. Don't
But,
tell me it's in
hey,
this building.
ease your mind, though. You got some real military guns in there, too.
We're probably gonna need them.
We got all that and a lot more coming up on Griot's Garage Treasure, so stick with us. Did I tell you? Isn't this cool in
I
here?
didn't believe you.
And here's Bill Cotter. Hey, Bill. Welcome. Thank you for letting us come in here with Sam Lamolo. Did I steer you wrong, bud?
No, you didn't, boy. What a great, you'd never know it from the outside. He had me scared.
A little rough on the outside.
You got all kind of neat cars in here. And you've got a 50, what is it, a 55 Bird?
The 55 Bird.
I'm gonna check this thing out, man. Look at this. This is a weird car.
While he's looking at weird cars, let's check this one out.
Right.
I don't know about this car. It's like a 85, 86J body, which is a Buick Regal, you know, an Oldsmobile Cutlass, Pontiac Grand Prix. But you look at the nose, and it's got like a Pontiac nose on it. But back here, you know, it's got the Chevrolet Aero back on it, and then it's got a little wing Pontiac taillights. I have no idea what this is all about.
This is a 1986 2+2 Grand Prix. This was Pontiac's version of Chevy's Aero Coupe, and they needed to homologate this car for NASCAR, so they adjusted the back, they put the Aero Coupe back end on it, small trunk, did some work on the front end. They built the required 1,000, I believe, and then Petty drove, this was the body that he drove in 1986.
Got 118,871 miles on the clock. You know, it helps if you're like an engineer at Ford, and the fellow that owned this, Bill Clausen, was an engineer at Ford. This is something he got right from the factory and made a race car out of it, right?
That's correct. He let his bosses know at Ford that he wanted to take this racing. They had him start the Ford Sports Car Club. And as far as we know, as soon as they made a white car, he got that, and they pulled it off the line. He got a special engine. Any new components went on this car.
Oh, really? So that helps to have those kind of things going for you.
I believe so.
All right, now tell me about this engine here, Bill.
Being in 1955, it has the 292 engine. The 312 engine was a better engine, a little bit more horsepower, a little bit more torque, but we had no reason to change this one out. A lot of the top-end components are from the later 312s. Again, as soon as Ford made a better component, it went on this car. So the heads are probably 312, the manifolds are 312. And he raced this hard from 55 to 62.
And he ran this on the beach at Daytona, right?
He went for the time trials on the beach in Daytona in 1957. According to the plaque on the door from Bill France, it was, I believe, 134 or 137 miles per hour.
Huh. And of course, he kept meticulous records on this too, didn't he?
Yes, being an engineer and with a brand new car, he had the opportunity to correspond with the bosses and was involved in the development of the car. So I have his notes, he kept track of his expenses, oil changes, tires, everything that had to do with this car. And being one of the first ones ordered, and again, as an engineer, he kept these notes. So we have, every time anything was published about a change in this car, he would get that, write a note on it, and it would go into this car.
Boy, it's too bad not many of these cars are documented like that, but Sam's got an interesting one that he's checking out right now. Let's see what he's up to.
This is a really neat car. These cars were built in England. They're real race cars back when they wore open face helmets, short sleeve shirt. And they were a handful to drive. You were exposed like a motorcycle.
1952 J2 Allard. It's got a Cadillac engine, 331. It's a real famous West Coast race car.
They had really weak drum brakes. Most of them had Cadillac engines, and all kinds of big V8s were put in these things, even Hemis. I bet you there's a really interesting story behind this one.
It's known as the number 15. The number 14 car was a black car, similar, which was probably the most prestigious and successful J2 Allard. When that wrecked, this one was put on the track. Vic Edelbrock Sr. engine and components had the best of everything. And it really did well. Primarily the Northwest, but we had a big race out here in the 50s, the Seafair race, and Carroll Shelby came out, Phil Hill came out, and he beat them all in this car.
I'm looking at this program here from the International Formula Libre Grand Prix. This was in Watkins Glen, New York, back in 1960. And this is a whole nother era of racing, and this car represents that era as well. This This is called a Scarab.
Lance Reventlow built a number of cars, perhaps 13. This is the last or the second to last car.
And he had hired a couple of guys that did a lot of Indy cars, Troutman and Barnes, to design and build a lot of the different chassis.
It's the only rear-engine open-wheel car he had built. There was hopes that Formula One would allow a bigger displacement in 60, 61. That didn't happen, so this car joined what was known as Formula Intercontinental or Formula Libre. It ran well. Sterling Moss in a different car had a wonderful battle with this in Australia. Post that race, it became a number of different race cars, but we restored it back to original Scarab.
Big Ford sedan for racing, but Ford realized they had to do a little fastback, and a lot of these cars had a certain chassis code people look for. It came with the 406 engine, and of course with some 427s. But this car, it's an automatic car, but it's got factory gauge pack, it's got the tack, and you look under the hood, it does have the FE block. It's a 406, got 3 2-barrels on it, even got electronic ignition. And you got an engine that big with that much carburation, weak spark will always hurt you. So I'll bet you this thing really scoots along, and there's probably some serious story behind this car.
It's a 63.5 Galaxy. Halfway through 1963, Ford determined that to be competitive in NASCAR, they needed to adjust the body. So that is a fastback version, came out halfway through the year. I believe most of them were 427s. There may have been some of the early ones with the 406 tri-powers in it. That one has a 406 tri-power.
Yep, this is a Ford Galaxy 500 XL. We're gonna take a quick break, but don't go away because there's a lot more to see.
This edition of Griot's Garage Treasures is being brought to you by Griot's, car care for the perfectionist, and by ARP, the world leader in fastener technology, and by Original Parts Group, world's largest source of GM A-body parts and accessories.
Hey, welcome back here to Griot's Garage Treasures. We're here in the storage area for Bill Cotter, who's got a vast array of different cars and a lot of other things here in his storage area. But this is one car that he drives quite a bit in a lot of different types of races. Originally started out as a 69 Corvette, what they called the B.F. Goodrich Corvette.
B.F. Goodrich sponsored 3 race cars in the United States to be built by John Greenwood.
They called it the John Greenwood style because what they did is they take the old Corvettes, and John Greenwood, who was a famous racer, would redesign the body to make it a lot more aero efficient, and they would use that to redo these Corvettes to make them a better race car.
They also sponsored one to be built in Canada by B.F. Goodrich in Canada. This is that car.
Had a 427 engine in it. Engine now is one that's built by Ron Shaver. If you look up here in front, you can see the older Corvettes, they would have the flip-up headlights. Well, they took that out, and what they've done is they put the headlights in here, but then they put a clear plastic cover over that so you could not only see through it, but it also would add to the aero package on this.
They brought it down to Detroit, finished it off at Greenwood's shop with his components, and it raced FIA, a lot of FIA races in Canada with the B.F. Goodrich sponsorship. The interesting challenge of the car was it ran on street tires. And so there's lots of pictures of the L88 motor blowing up because the street tires were spinning.
But over the years it's been converted, so it's still a good plaything, a lot of fun to run, but this is a car that even today you can still have a good time with.
I've taken it to Le Mans 3 times. It's a great race car.
Well, I think Sam is having a good time with a Porsche. Check him out.
You know, Porsches are so pretty. This car is really gorgeous. Now what this is a DP Motorsports 935.
It's a 1985 930 converted to 935. And DP does lots of customization or modifications of Porsche racing cars. And they build the bodies for the Kremer cars.
Basically kind of a street legal version of the 930 race car. Got a 3.3 liter in it, single stage turbo. This one had adjustable boost of 450 horsepower. Awesome to look at, awesome to drive. This is very special because this car was built and given to a very special guy.
This car was intended as a gift, a compensation to Mario Andretti from Porsche. So it has a roll cage, great turbo lag. When the power hits, it really takes off.
You know, here in his collection, this is probably one of the most sought-after Corvettes around. This is a 63 split-window coupe.
One of my first race cars. It's a very robust, good car. It's real fast. You can go off the road by accident and not be broken. I've probably raced that car more than any other car. I probably have 120 race starts in that thing. And it's rarely let me down.
He's raced it for a long time, but just recently he had it in a historic race. Something special happened to this car.
I drove the 63 Corvette last year at Monterey, and we had some Navy SEALs visiting the track, and we were asked for volunteers, and I was proud to drive these young men around the track, and it was pretty interesting in that nothing in the race car is going to scare a Navy SEAL. They had a great time.
Here's a pair of Group 2 race cars. The 74 BMW 2002s. This is the car that pretty much put BMW on the map in America.
One is out of Belgium, the other one's out of Japan. They weren't originally imported to the United States. Very small production numbers. My understanding is they needed to come out with the 2-liter engine turbocharged so they could run it in Formula 2 or a different race series.
These were like little tanks, had a 2-liter 4-cylinder in them. These have actually started their life with what they call a TII. They had mechanical Kugel-Fischer injection on it. Now, these are turbo models. If you notice, this has got molded flares, but this has got bolt-on flares. The Japanese really didn't like those flares. They molded them in. They're really pretty cars. They had a tall greenhouse. The visibility was excellent out these cars.
I really like the car. I've always liked the BMW 2002s, and this is just a little bit better. We probably get 20 to 40 horsepower more, and it makes it a real joy to drive.
You know, there's a lot of interesting cars here, but who would have ever thought you'd find what we call mini cars?
I'm the proud father of 2 young men, and when they were little, I was always looking for interesting cars their size.
This one right here is interesting. This is a little Italian mini car, got an engine in the back. It's called a Simsa, and I think it might be the only one around for all I know, but this has suspension in it, key, everything, an actual little mini car. Obviously not built for a guy like me.
It is an Italian car, one-off, hand-built. It's got a 1-cylinder air-cooled engine. The gauges work, the lights work. It's a great kid's car. I'm not sure what it was intended for in the early 60s, but it's a neat toy.
But here's another one over here that I think is really interesting. This is called the Devon Jr. And Bill Devon is famous for building some fabulous lightweight sports cars. There are a few of them around. They're collector's items, and they are very, very valuable.
Devon's sports racer business, when there was time, he would go ahead and weld up chassis and make the bodies, pull the bodies off the Junior. It looks like one of their regular cars, and that one is fairly unique. There can't be more than a handful of them around.
Pretty fun piece to have in your collection, really unique. We're going to take a short break, and when we talk about unique, we're going to show you some even more unique things. So stay with us here on Griot's Garage Treasures. Hey, welcome back to Griot's Garage Treasures. And when we're talking about treasures, you never know what you're going to find in a garage. Well, look what we found here in Bill Carter's garage. This, my friends, is an original Cobra. You know, there's been a lot of them built. In fact, if you followed me any time at all, you know that I built a Cobra years ago, but it was a replica. We had a lot of fun with it. A lot of people do that. It's probably the most replicated car going right now. This, though, is an original 289 Cobra. And as you can see, it's all aluminum. And if you look down here, you can see how the paint is all cracked and chipped now.
The Cobra is a 64. It's all original as far as we know it.
Back here, you can see it's got some wear in it, the leather seats, but this is a pretty nice example of an original 289 Cobra that's unrestored. The way these came about was, this was back in the early 60s. Carroll Shelby had an idea, if you can put a big motor in a light car, it can be very competitive against a lot of the European cars. Went to England, he worked a deal with AC Bristol. Bristol was a sports car at the time, and got Ford to get a little 289. Actually, I think the first ones were 260s, but he shoehorned a 289 in there. The rest is magic. He got Ford to back him with more engines, and this is what you have.
I've had the motor rebuilt. It drives like a brand new car. I enjoy it because it's a car that's there to be driven. It's not a restored car. It's not an over-restored car.
Beautiful little car. Of course, it went up to the 427 Cobras, which were real world beaters, but something that you really need to look at, and it's got quite a history too.
That car has a track record in Ohio at some small club, so it's one of the ones that is considered an independent race car.
This is a really neat little sports car. You know, this is a Sunbeam Alpine Tiger. This was what they call Roots Group, which was British Chrysler. They made Sunbeam, Hillman, Singer, all kinds of cars. They made a nice little 4-cylinder sports car called an Alpine.
My first car was a Sunbeam Alpine, and I learned how to repair a car and push a car. The Tiger is like the ultimate Alpine in that it's roughly the same car with a 260 or 289 Ford engine in it.
4-speed gearbox, a little heavier suspension brakes, fast little car, fun to drive, originated by Chrysler in England.
That one has the original 260, and it's appropriate for the rest of the car, so it's a lot of fun. The back end comes around. It's not overpowered. It's just a nice match.
Here's a special race car that is special to build. This is called a Formula Junior. It's called the Tarashi. Built in Italy. Got a little Fiat 4-cylinder engine. You can see it's a nice little deal, but this was popular back in the 60s where they run the Formula Junior, and you can see one of the things they have here, wire wheels with knockoffs on it. And if you look here on the suspension, one of the things they did is drilled out all these holes. And the reason they did that is to lighten the suspension. You had less unsprung weight that way. But this was a car that could give you a real thrill, and this is really special to build.
The Tarashi is my first race car, 1959 Tarashi. That being said, once I purchased that, I turned it over to get race prepared, and that took more than 3 years. So by the time I got it, I'd raced quite a few other cars.
No matter how you look at this car, it is absolutely gorgeous. The 2003 Aston Martin, the Zagato body, definitely a Southern California car where they have no rain because there's no top. Got the twin bubbles, it's bigger in the back, got the long chute on it. Got a 6.2 liter V12 in it. Beautiful leather. This is an awesome car, and this is one of only 99 made. I'd like to just jump in this thing and take it away.
This edition of Griot's Garage Treasures is being brought to you by Griot's, car care for the perfectionist, and by Original Parts Group, world's largest source of GM A-body parts and accessories, and by ARP, the world leader in fastener technology.
Welcome back to Griot's Garage Treasures. Talk about having fun in the garage. Bill has a lot of fun. He's got a lot more in his collection than just vehicles. Look at this, a lot of vintage weapons, vintage military vehicles, vintage military gear. Here's a 45 caliber Thompson submachine gun. These are heavy pieces. And of course, he really has fun with all of his stuff.
This is an interesting piece. This is a Laws rocket. It's a lightweight, disposable rocket launcher from Vietnam era. This one has already fired its rocket, so it's perfectly safe. But it was relatively easy to use. You put it up, it fires electronically, you'd shoot your rocket, you'd stomp on this and disable it and leave it out in the jungle.
Here's another piece of World War II history. This is a German assault rifle, fully automatic, beautiful gun, and of course, they still make these today. That's a pretty awesome weapon, well made. Bill's got another gun right over here.
This is one of my favorites. This is an MG42, and it was known as Hitler's buzzsaw. The gun is so good that it's still being manufactured today. The parts are interchangeable. It was state-of-the-art in '44, and it's pretty much state-of-the-art now.
Here's a little hot rod in the collection, 1944. It's on tracks, it's like an armored personnel carrier for a utility vehicle. It's got a 100-horse Merc flathead V8 in it, 4-speed transmission, Ford transmission. And of course, these things were rough and tumble, tough to ride in, but they did a great job. They were always outfitted with big machine gun. That's a 50 caliber there. This has got an anti-tank gun on it. They could armor them any way they wanted. These things really moved a lot of troops around.
This is one of my favorite guns. This is a Vickers water-cooled machine gun, similar to World War I style, but this was actually post-World War I and used in World War II. This jacket would be filled with water. You'd have a tank, and it keeps the barrel cool enough that you can shoot sustained fire. The interesting thing about this gun is the Brits that used an armored personnel carrier similar to mine would mount these in the front.
You know, when you can't get customer service anywhere, this baby will help you out. Nice and light, World War II bazooka. This is when you brought out the big guns. Remember, never pointed it anywhere.
This is a fun motor vehicle. This is a Vietnam-era military mule. This was a Marine Corps version, magnesium chassis. High performance for what it did. It's considered to be a quarter-ton truck. You can drive it from the front, pull the steering wheel back, and have it fully loaded up with a hand throttle. Four-wheel drive, four-wheel steer. These were hard to stop. They used them as equipment carriers. They mounted guns on them. These were really quite a little workhorse.
It's a wonderful piece of equipment. It's a BAR, Browning automatic rifle. It's a 30-06 caliber. Got bipods in the front. I'll tell you what, the GIs really like this gun. This thing would really do a job. But, you know, I've been playing here enough with all this military stuff. Let's get back to the cars and see what Dave's up to.
Well, while Sam's been out there playing with the guns, I've been playing with the legend right here. This is probably one of the best known cars outside of the Cobra that Ford's ever produced. This is the GT40. Now back in the 60s they built these things and they won Le Mans with it, but this is a 2007 version. It's got a 5.4 liter 4-cam engine in it, supercharged. It'll go from 0 to 100 in about 8.8 seconds, top out about 212 miles an hour. That is what I like about this car. As you can see, it is a cool looking car. This is what they call the Heritage Edition. It looks like the cars did back when they won at Le Mans. But the one problem the old cars had was a guy like me, there's no way I could get in them. But for a guy like Bill, he can probably get into this one.
The Ford GT is one of my favorite cars. Ford made them for 2 years, and I like the style I always have, but the original cars are very small, and I could never fit in one. So this is ideal for the modern American.
This week, we're going to have fun in your garage using spray-on wax. Be sure to rinse the surface thoroughly. Spray-on wax should always be applied to a clean surface. Dry a majority of the water off the surface, leaving the paint clean and damp. Then simply mist spray-on wax across the surface, working from the top down. Dry as you normally would, using a soft microfiber drying towel. It's okay to use spray-on wax on a dry vehicle as long as it's clean. Simply mist across the surface and just buff to a perfect shine. That looks awesome. It's that easy. Increase your protection, enhance the gloss, and remember to have fun in your garage.
Well, Sam, I'm looking at this thing. It's got a race seat in it. It looks like it might have just a little bit more room for a guy like me.
You know, this is awesome. This is really good. You'd look good in this. I think if you get yourself in, you'll be comfortable once you're in there.
I think I would be.
So shoe yourself in. I'll jump in the Aston Martin convertible, the Z, and we'll just go ahead.
I don't think Bill will let me get into this. I wouldn't if I was him. Anyway, we want to thank Bill Cotter for allowing us to have fun here in his garage. Once again, we've run out of time. We'll see you again next time here at Griot's Garage Treasures.
So long.